Firstly, Sid, thank you so much for doing this session. Really, really appreciate it. Now, Sid, I very strongly feel that heavy metal is,
Mm.
if not the most addictive drug in the world, second to maybe, let's say, fitness. So I'm really curious to have a chat with you and talk to you about your knowledge in the space. Now, I personally think you're the most up to date person and the most knowledgeable person in the metal scene when it comes to, let's say, album releases, EPs, and extreme genre music. And you are the go to person for staying updated with all that is happening in the heavy metal community. So, thank you so much for doing this session. Really, really appreciate it. Now, before we get started, Sid, just wanted to check, how has your day been so far?
Oh, it's been a mess. I literally had pest control in my house,
Oh,
so me and my dog have been out of it. We just got back. She's literally sleeping over here.
is she
And
doing better now?
yeah, we got her vaccinated today. We got her
Oh, okay.
vaccinated.
Why don't you tell our listeners what is the name of your pet?
So my dog's name is Fifi, and she's about 15. I got her way back in 2008, and she's been with me ever since. If she wasn't there with me during COVID, I would have probably gone insane. But at least we had each other's back.
100%, yeah, 100%. You're absolutely spot on. And we often chat about, your pet as well. So I hope that, she gets better and better. Now, Sid, you're constantly updated with what is going on in extreme music space. And in our
Yes.
WhatsApp group that we have, you're one of the only few people who constantly keeps updating people on, the latest album releases,
Mhm.
latest projects. And what I really like about your messages, it's really short and sweet. It isn't that, you're trying to elaborate or trying to show off. So I really wanted to get into the details of, how you updated with all this information. But before that, Sid, let's travel back in time. Can you tell us when was the first time you got introduced to heavy metal? The first song, the first album? Was it an event? Was it during the college days or something?
Well, for me, I first got introduced, I think I was about, what, 14 or 15.
Hmm.
And I had a friend who used to actually play bass. And he started to show everybody in my high school metal. And not a lot of people were taken by it at first glance. But for me, the interesting part was I actually started getting interested when he showed me old Arch Enemy,
Oh, okay.
because I had never heard a woman do growls or any of that. Because back then, the only form of music that I was closely associated with was old Hindi music and 90s rap. So
Absolutely. Yeah.
no, I had no comprehension that even metal was a thing. You know, like until he came along and he opened my ears, I didn't really think that there was a genre like this that was this diverse and had people who had a vocal ability to do what Angela Gosso could do with her voice, you know?
Yeah.
And the fact she actually attracted me to the genre because that's how I started. I didn't start like how traditional people do with Metallica and all of that. No, I went straight into death metal and then traced back.
That is absolutely wicked. Now, am I right in saying that this would be during the end of 1990s or early 2000s era, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking, it might have been 2008.
Okay.
So that's like peak desert rock. The last desert rock festival happened at that time. I was lucky. I got to see that
Yeah.
because that's when I got to see Opeth in action. I got to see Arch Enemy in action. I got to see As I Lay Dying in action, and that was essentially my first metal gig.
Yeah, and I think Motorhead headlined the gig as well, right?
Yes.
I
I mean,
definitely
but
attended that.
yeah.
Yeah, because I remember I was back in India and I found out about Desert Rock Festival and I was like, let's why not go out and attend it?
I did not know we had a scene until I actually went to that festival, you
Yeah,
know?
yeah.
And that's how it started for me because, like, once I got into metal, then I just decided that let's branch out and see what actually this is. Because, I mean, I started hearing folk metal,
Yeah.
thrash, Black metal. At that time, I didn't really get into black metal as much as I do now.
Ah, okay, so now you're totally into black metal and stuff here.
I enjoy the shit out of it. Like it it makes me, like I told you this on WhatsApp. Certain black metal,
Hmm.
like even with the shitty production and things,
Yeah,
that
that is what makes
also,
it unique, though, isn't it?
yeah, it. I mean, barring all the Satanism crap that is there, a lot of it, if you go into the themes of black metal, it's a lot about nature,
Yep.
islands, uh, humanity, different things. It's just one thing I realized while listening to so much metal is that we have the ability to express ourselves a lot better in this genre than others because nobody's afraid to ruffle any feathers,
One
which is
percent. Yeah,
which
yeah.
which is probably the best form of expression because if you think about it, in metal, in something like metalcore, in death metal, in melodic death metal, in progressive death metal, we tackle themes like abuse, depression, politics, um, racism, other things that normal genres like pop or rap
Yeah.
wouldn't really go to unless you go really underground.
100%. Yeah.
It's because, I mean, those genres blew up so much that it sort of got saturated and these topics started being frowned upon, you
Yeah.
know, which is something that metal is still free to elaborate on, and people are still able to express themselves and their views because at the end of the day, music is the one medium that people use to express themselves creatively, you know.
That is beautifully said. And I think our listeners should know that you're an absolute encyclopedia when it comes to, the different genres. And you do know quite a lot of it in terms of, the technicalities of it, in terms of who is the record label behind the album, the band members, what is the history. And to be honest, in a relatively short period of time, I think you
Yeah,
know
I
quite
mean,
a lot of information related to extreme
for
music.
me, I didn't exactly start going in depth
Hmm.
until I had been listening to metal for a good 2 to 3 years. Then I started getting interested in different subgenres. Because I mean, I stuck to death metal for about 2 years. Then I decided, okay, let's give this a shot and that a shot. And then when I started listening to more bands and being exposed to different things that a lot of bands were starting to do, and then when I started understanding that the scene is going one way behind, because you have to understand, like, you've probably heard of Bring Me the Horizon, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Now, one thing I've understood after listening to them for so long, because I've been listening to them since they released their debut EP. Okay. So I've been there through their deathcore days, through their alternative days, and now through whatever it is that they're doing now. So I've seen them change their sound in a way that is actually beneficial to them because they were very smart about it. I'll tell you what actually interested me is that they, with every single album, showed a very steady progression in order to become what I would call the gateway band.
Ah, okay.
You understand? So they started to tinker around a little by little with their sound, adding electronics, adding effects, adding choirs, adding blah 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 blah, and it started to progress very very well because diehard fans and new fans started to come together, and they still do that. You know, they're,
Absolutely. Yeah.
they're one of the few bands where their old fans don't feel alienated, neither do the new ones, you know, which is a good marriage, which many other bands, if you notice in the scene that many bands have blown up, is very difficult to do because, like, one thing I noticed especially about the more popular metal scenes like metalcore and deathcore is that they grow stale very quickly. Okay, because what happens is that, say you got one band that tries something and it works and it makes them explode. The rest of them try to ape it. Okay. And when
Yeah,
they ape it, obviously they're not going to achieve the same level because they don't tinker enough to differentiate themselves. So everything in the scene starts to stagnate,
correct. Yeah,
you know, and that sort of brings the scene down altogether until said same band decides to blow it up again and show the world how it's done.
yeah. And some of the things that you mentioned, it does make quite a lot of sense, particularly when you talk about the fan base. And the
Oh,
classic example I can think of is, let's say, Decapitated. When I used to listen to the
Jesus
earlier
Christ.
Decapitated, I used to love it, but the current one, I really am not sure. The same thing is, even with Sepultura
He
as well.
Decapitated, I enjoyed
Yeah,
when they had the old drummer. Rest in peace.
yeah,
But he was great. I enjoyed Nihility and all of that. The new stuff is great. It's groovy, but it's not got the same tech death edge that old Decapitated had.
yeah,
You know, this Decapitated sounds more like a very heavy machine head
yeah.
compared to the
The
old.
old school death metal. Yeah,
I mean, even Machine Head sounds. It sounds like Rob Flynn is trying to be an angsty teenager when he's clearly like 40 something, and you're like, his cleans are great, but the
yeah.
rest of it, not so much.
Now, what I wanted to ask next is, Sid, regarding sharing of music. Now
Yes.
I'm a bit old, I started to listen to heavy metal going back to, late 90s. And back then, there was a different way how we used to share music,
Yeah,
but
I think I know with Bluetooth and MP3s. Yeah,
we used to have MP3. Before that, we used to also have cassettes.
yes,
So, we used to actually buy cassettes and we used to have part, I think it was side A, side B. We
yes.
used to flip the cassette. But when you got introduced into heavy metal, what was the community? How were people sharing the music back then? Because I'm pretty much sure right now,
So
maybe share
when
music is a bit different right now, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, right now it's even more different than it used to be. Because, I mean, back when I started getting into metal, people were still sharing CDs,
Yeah,
MP3s through Bluetooth. There was no Spotify.
yeah.
Napster was just starting. Nobody really knew what streaming was. SoundCloud was erupting because a lot of bands started there. MySpace became a thing that
Mm,
became its own genre called MySpace Core, you know where a lot of interesting thing is MySpace Core actually started what we now call as electronic core,
oh,
which is electronic music mixed with metal.
yeah.
A lot of bands like Attack Attack, Asking Alexandria, all these guys started in that and blew up and became the giants now. Fun fact, Asking Alexandria actually started here.
In Dubai?
Yes.
Oh, wicked, yeah.
Yeah. They started here, and then they branched out back home in the UK.
Oh, that's really interesting, yeah.
They, along with Nerve Cell, were one of the few bands that actually established that this place has a scene.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, for me, back in '08, the first Nerve Cell record I heard was Flesh and Memories.
Mm.
You know, great record.
And was No Cell with the band that played in Desert Rock Festival? Because I'm pretty
Yes,
much they did
yes,
a cover of
yes.
Sepultura, if I'm not mistaken.
They played Desert Rock, and it was also the time that there was an Egyptian band over there called Scarab.
Yeah, they are massive, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I do remember watching Scarab play with Nile, and that was in
Yes.
Liverpool, England. With
Scarab is still around.
yeah, yeah.
They don't release as much, but they're still around. Mm, I mean, for me, now since I listen to everything from brutal music to progressive music, I tend to enjoy a lot of doom now which is something that I realized as I age.
Hmm.
Like for me, I like to enjoy a lot of funeral doom, which is very slow and very like makes you feel like a mountain fell on your head. You know?
And there was a band from Sri Lanka which is based in Dubai right
Yes.
now. Solidarity Depression.
Stigmata, right?
Which not Stigmata, I think Solidarity Depression.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I saw those guys.
Yeah,
You and I saw those guys. Remember?
correct, yeah.
Yeah, they're actually pretty good. They're depressive black metal, but they're very good.
And what
It's,
I wanted to ask is, the first band which got you into heavy metal, do you have any souvenirs from them that you still keep it right now, or is it something you don't think about?
I have not kept any memorabilia from that. I actually started keeping memorabilia after I took my friend to Septic Flesh.
Okay.
Because like once I got into university, that's when I actually, because in my university we had a 5 year program. All right. And during the 5 years I never made anyone realize that I liked metal,
Yeah,
because I wasn't sure how people would react to that, how they would, you know, accept it. Because at the end of the day, given what heavy metal is and what death metal is and what metal is in general, one of the things I always wanted to do was actually try and break the stereotypes that is associated with metal. Because I mean, having grown up in a family where people don't listen to any metal at all, you know? I mean, my dad, okay, he he told me when I started getting into metal that the music I listen to is meant for animals. I'm not joking. He said that to my face. And I was just like, you have no idea. My mom still thinks that. My
yeah,
mom still thinks that. So, I mean, the one thing I always strive to tell people is that you can't take it on the surface level, okay? Because there's a lot of things that go into creating any form of art.
yeah,
A metal itself is an art, because at the end of the day, what people need to understand is that in order to scream, there is technique involved. If you do it wrong, you're fucked,
correct, yeah.
you know? Uh, I mean, people have to understand that at the end of the day, the way metal formed, it actually came out of blues.
Yep,
So it's not something that can be taken lightly. I mean, I understand you won't take to it the way other people would, but at the same time, I would appreciate if people gave it a chance, because you know it deserves that much.
100%. And Sid, me personally, I think you might be aware about it as well. I'm into extreme sports. I
Yes.
do a lot of obstacle course race, and I've been doing this nonstop since 2017. And I'm still yet to find one single person who listens to heavy metal. The only person I saw back in 2018 was one guy who was wearing Slayer t-shirt. And I asked him, Slayer, he was like, no, I have no idea what this band is all about. And to
Jesus
be
Christ.
honest, for our listeners, if you look up Tough Mudder or Spartan Race, it is a perfect combination with, extreme music, let's say, be heavy metal, be it death metal or even black metal. And I do feel that, what you said, as long as people try to open their understanding towards different genres of music, particularly in the heavy metal side, they would get a better understanding of, what it means. So absolutely spot
I
on.
mean, I mean, think about it. Something as simple as cattle decapitation.
Yeah,
Okay, very abrasive sound, very interesting sound,
yeah,
uh, extremely varied vocal range,
yeah,
but at the same time, very important themes.
yeah,
You know, if people decide to give it a chance and they do a deep dive, they will actually understand that what Travis Ryan is trying to say actually means a lot for humanity.
yeah.
You know, and it's that's the one thing that makes me actually share metal now, because during my last 2 years of university is when I actually said, you know what, fuck it. I'm just going to show people metal. If they take to it, okay. If they don't take to it, nothing, no harm done.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know? So I started showing people stuff like Paradise Lost, Cattle Decap, um, Suffocation.
Oh, I love Suffocation's new album. Yeah, yeah, absolutely one of my all-time top five bands of all time, to be honest. Yeah,
I showed them stuff like Whitechapel,
yep,
the new Whitechapel, where he does cleans too, so people understand that screaming doesn't affect your singing voice. I showed them Ginger. I showed a lot of people many things, and they started to open their ears.
yep,
And then the more they opened their ears, I got them into like Infant Annihilator and shit like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, just keep your ears open and don't judge it for what it is. Learn about it, understand what the musician is trying to put across as a point. Don't take everything to heart. Because at the end of the day, imagine somebody trying to take a Cannibal Corpse song to heart when all that is about is just horror movies and shit.
Yeah. It's more about fun and as
Yeah.
taken so seriously. And Sid, you're always updated with what is going on in the extreme music genre. Now, what I
Yes.
wanted to find out is what is it that sparked your interest in being updated with, let's say, album releases or EPs by bands?
Well, see, it's very simple. For me, once I started getting into the genre, I started listening to bands. I started with all the gateway bands, your Metallica,
Mhm.
Megadeth, Slayer, blah, 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 blah. And then the more genres I explored, then I started growing my ears, you know. Then I started following different musicians, see what they would share,
Yep,
how that would open my horizons, because you have to understand metal musicians don't listen to metal 90% of the time.
definitely not. Yeah, they listen to different
Because if,
genres.
yeah, so like for me, if they shared metal, I would listen to that. If they shared classical music, I would listen to that. If they, you know, and that's how it opened up my horizons because then I ended up listening to everything, you know, and plus it got me to understand certain influences. You can like the more I got into the genre, the more I started going into songs of varied length. Like I can jump from one hardcore song to a progressive song that's well over 20 minutes to a funeral doom song that's like 85 minutes.
Yep.
It's
And do you know of any other person or any of your friend or any YouTube personality who does something similar to what you do or has a similar passion like yours? Or any
so
famous person that the listeners can
so so like there's a few YouTube channels that I follow that actually widen my knowledge. One of them is a guy called Metal Trenches.
Mhm.
Okay, he's very good because he number one he's a mental health professional, and number two he makes tier lists of really obscure shit. You
Mhm.
know, and I'm very interested in that because like you have to understand all the gateway bands, be it your 80s thrash, 90s death metal, blah 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 blah, all of them start to stagnate at some point.
Yeah.
So that's through him and through various other YouTube channels I decided to go into the underground, and one of them was actually a Canadian channel. Okay, it's called Banger TV,
Oh yeah.
and they have a segment called the Metal Monthly. Okay,
Okay.
on Metal Monthly, every single month they break down all the albums coming out during that month, the ones to look out for, and then they give you 5 to 10 recommendations of the underground.
And the channel is still on right now.
Oh yeah, 100%, 100%. They have their own shows. I mean, the guy who created that channel, he ended up doing a TV series with Geddy Lee from Rush. You know, where he asked whether bass players are human too.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah.
Speaking of bass players, I mean, there's this bass player from Mumbai, India. She's an absolute beast.
Are we talking about the Bengali?
Mohini
Yeah, 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 yeah,
is
yeah.
an
I know.
absolute,
I,
absolute,
Moini Day, right? Yeah,
yeah,
I know.
she's an absolute legend. I mean, I can't even imagine, the level that she's playing in. And apparently she's played with, Marco Miniman. And even Steve Vai's really some top level people. And not
She's,
musician.
she actually goes to Nam quite a
Yeah,
bit,
yeah,
you know. So it's very interesting to see people's Nam footage.
yeah,
'Cause then you get to see new axes,
yeah.
new drum kits, new blah blah blah, and it's very like educational, but at the same time you get to see talent, real
Correct. You're
talent.
telling you. I remember there was a Russian guy who used to play bass, and he used to make videos on how to learn bass. And he put out a video that this person needs to stop playing bass because she's so good and
Yeah.
at a completely different level. Now, Sid, I'm going to put you on the spot and I'm going to ask you, what are your top five albums of all time? Just the top five if you have to choose. Now, you can give 10, you can give 20, and it becomes easier. But if you were to cut it down to just top five, what would it be?
The best top five albums of all time. That's actually very easy for me because I'm just going off feeling.
Hmm.
Okay. These are albums that stuck with me that I can put on at any time. So, one album that stuck with me no matter what and that I can actually listen to at any time is actually Bell Witch's Mirror Reaper.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a long fucking record, but it's a single track record, 84 minutes long.
Damn.
You can do calculus to that shit, and what it makes you feel is nothing short of bliss. You know, it's like listening to meditational music.
Yep.
It's that good, and given the fact that it's made by just two people, puts it right up there. Then so that was one record. Now we go on to the next one. So the other record that made me feel something was actually I forgot the record's name, but I think it was Fragments of Degeneration by Disharmonia Mundi,
Oh,
a,
yeah.
a very good Italian melodeath band that isn't around anymore. They were very, very good. They had three vocalists, and some of the stuff that they did with the guy from Soilwork,
Hmm.
absolutely amazing.
Damn.
And I also like some really obscure black metal. Like recently, one of the artists that I listened to, his name was Nun. Okay,
How do you. Okay.
N
How do you
O
spell
N E,
that? Okay.
Nun, and he made an album called Inevitable. It came out this year. Very, very good piece of atmospheric death metal. I mean, not death metal. Sorry, black metal.
Would that be in your top five, would you say, or just the best album of this year?
Uh, it's one of the best of this year. It's not the best. There's
Okay.
others that are much better, but he's an artist that I look out for, you know. And one of the other, so that was three albums, right?
Yep.
So my fourth album is actually one called, I forgot the name, but I know the artist.
Mm.
So the artist is actually a progressive death metal band, and their name is Illustrium. And I remember the name now. So the album's called The Monument of Silence, and that album fascinates me so much because it is probably the best deep dive on musicality as well as theme because the album is about mental health, and it tackles every single issue you can think of mental health. You know, every song is tackling a different part of how people deal with it. And then, so how many albums was that? Three or four? So my last recommendation is actually an album that has stuck with me, and it's something that I don't think I will ever experience ever again unless this band manages to create magic like that. And it's actually a purely instrumental album, and it's called "From the Gallery of Sleep"
Okay.
by Night Verses. That that record was actually their first um, album as an instrumental band, and what they created is something that I still cannot come to terms with, because every single song is a different landscape. You know, it's like traveling an entire planet where every single song is just crafted to perfection. They make you feel so many things. There's different atmospheres. There's I've never seen three people play their instruments so uh, how do I put this? They they play it so formidably that you're in awe.
Unique and artistic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's it's one of the albums that is the ultimate form of expression. Yeah, to make your instrument sing in a way that you're able to effectively communicate what you're trying to say is the ultimate form of expression. and
100% agree. Yeah.
and like it's a record that I keep coming back to, that I recommend to people to try, because I mean it just it resonates with me so much.
Well, what I'll do is, the show notes, I'll definitely go ahead and mention that. Now, this year, there have
Hmm.
been quite a lot of great releases as well. And we just briefly touched base upon, Suffocation, there's Dying Fetus. Is there any particular album or record this particular year you would recommend to the listeners?
There's many, but okay, let's see. um One record that I have been listening to a lot past few months is actually it's a black metal record,
Hmm.
and I enjoy the shit out of it. It's it's a record by Valdron.
Okay.
Well, Valdron and Moonlight Sorcery both made really good melodic black metal records. Uh, in terms of the more renowned bands, I guess I liked Neobliviscaris' record all the way back in May or March or whatever when that came out, because like they're a band that makes really long songs, but they do it with such dexterity and such craftsmanship that you're just in awe, of what they pull off. Like my ears start doing a little dance every time. It's like that. Like,
That's really wicked to know. Now, we talked about, the albums that you like. Are there any albums or records that you absolutely hate and you think that, this shouldn't have been released, or completely utterly disappointed?
oh, uh, no, because for me, like, it's usually bands that disappoint, not the album,
Hmm.
you know? So for me, I get disappointed by simple shit like 6 Feet Under, or some useless crap like, you know, Fallout Boy,
Yeah.
or there was a rock band some time ago called Theory of a Dead Man.
Okay.
Not good at all. Papa Roach, same thing. They all blew up and then they went down. Falling in Reverse actually also blew up, but Ronnie is a douchebag, so no. But one band I enjoy a lot of is actually a band called Defiler.
Where are they from?
So Defiler is from the US, and they were actually one of the pioneers of deathcore with last 10 seconds of life. Um, then who else? Forgot. Suicide Silence, all these guys. But they managed to stay under the radar. They made one very famous song called Cryomancer that blew up because of like the first verse.
Oh, I see.
And then they made a few records. Then the band broke up. Then they formed a new band. It didn't last as long. Then they came back. And now it's basically a one man band.
I
And
see.
for me, I listen to a lot of one man bands because actual creativity flows out of those bands, you know?
Is Putrid Pal one man band as well, right?
I think so, yeah. Putrid Pile is a one man band. There's a Greek man by the name of Ilos.
Hmm.
He has quite a few one man bands. One of his best is a black metal band called Auriferous Flame.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So is
And
he just a guitarist and vocalist on stage when they do live, or is it like
I don't
they don't
think
do
one
live?
man bands do live unless you're Author and Punisher.
Putrid Pal, he does live gigs, but he's just on his guitar and vocals, and he
Yeah,
does a lot of
but
tour
that's using like pre recorded tracks.
drum tracks. Yeah.
Yeah. The thing with Ilos and a couple of other one man bands is they prefer to be studio bands because
Okay.
then
Yeah.
they can
Makes sense. Yeah.
pump out a lot of music.
Yeah.
You know, like somebody like I mentioned right now, Author and Punisher. Author and Punisher is very fascinating. You know why?
Hmm.
Because Author and Punisher, essentially the guy behind it, he was a mechanical engineer, and like myself, but he what's interesting about him is his passion for black metal was so good that he decided to make his own rig. You understand?
Okay.
He's not using traditional guitars, bass, drums. No,
But he's using
he's
doing what he's
he's
doing
just
for a living.
using a custom rig that creates, because technically he's industrial black metal, you know, so he has a lot of effects, really pounding, droning riffs, shrieky vocals. It's very interesting. It's if you do get a chance, you should check them out.
Definitely, and this is where the record label kicks in, isn't it? And we have
Oh
briefly
yeah,
discussed the
oh yeah.
different
I mean, like
as
if
well.
we're talking record labels, there's many record labels that people should actually keep an eye out for. One of them is Dying Victims,
Hmm.
then Transcending Obscurity.
From Mumbai, India.
Yes,
Yeah, absolutely love
I
the name.
didn't know that until I met the guy.
Yeah.
um, then 20 bucks spin, um, putrid spew. Um, there's a couple of others I forgot off the top of my head. But
Is there any specific region you think where the record labels are much better than, let's say, the other regions, based on your experience, or is it like
I
split?
I won't say record labels because at the end of the day, a record label has a big shade. You know, they don't just do one country; they do many. Like for
Yeah.
example, let's take Transcending Obscurity. Okay, Transcending Obscurity is an Indian label, but they have really obscure Swedish bands. They
Yep.
have really obscure Greek bands. It's a very interesting label, you know, because they don't just do death metal. They do thrash metal. They do melodic death metal. They do a lot of different things, and it's very interesting to be a record label because, I mean, these people obviously listen to a ton of demos, you know, a ton of demos with a variety of genres, and they then have to segregate who they're going to back.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, as a record label, obviously they're going to look at the economics, you know, and they're going to think about, okay, what can give me returns, you know,
And are
because
there any record labels from, let's say, the UAE or Middle East, which are picking up pace or at an international underground level?
underground level, I mean, Middle East publishes a lot of stuff. Not a lot of it is something I'm particularly interested in, but
Yeah.
that's a different story. Um, I mean, for me, probably the most interesting project was Eamon Graves, but that's because I love my death metal.
Hmm.
I I'll tell you one thing, okay? As I got deeper and deeper into metal, I started to not really focus on the more entry level genres. Like for me, I can't, since I've started to get into really dirty vocals, like I enjoy my gurgles and my snarls and all of that. So I don't feel like I enjoy clean vocals as much.
Yeah,
You have, like for me now at this stage, you have to be really proficient in order to have my attention if you're singing clean,
yeah,
you know. And like for me, I love my dissonance. I enjoy my dissonance. So if I find a band that does dissonance well, I will stay there for a long time. Like for me, I enjoy bands like Ulcerate, Disentomb, you know, Defeated Sanity.
oh, I love defeated sanity. Yeah,
Yeah, I like my brutal death metal. I like stuff like, this year one of the most putrid records I've heard is Eternal Rot's Moribund.
I think
It,
that was earlier this year, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I love the shit out of that record. It makes me so happy. And all he's doing is gurgling and making random turkey noises. But I mean, I followed Eternal Rot since their debut, but they just one thing I love about especially underground bands, like one of the bands that has gotten a lot of leverage this year is the Native American black metal band called Blackbird.
Okay.
You know, so that guy, he's essentially a one-man band as well, but he performs live with many others, like Hell Ripper does. You know, so it's very interesting to see these bands grow because when they get even a little bit of notoriety, they go into what I like to call the elitist metal sphere, which is really sad actually, because that's the one thing that pisses me off about metal, that we have elitists, you know? I mean, if a band is willing to experiment and you have been supporting said band from their inception, you should be able to accept that they are trying a new direction, you know? If you're going to support something, support it when it evolves. Don't just expect them to stay in the same sound forever, because at the end of the day that sound is going to become stale.
Monotonous as well. Yeah,
Yes, and then
just
you're
like the
go
previous record.
and then you're going to regret it
Yeah,
anyway. So might as well support them when they try to experiment, or even if they fail, it doesn't matter. At least they tried.
very very true. Yeah.
You know, that's what pisses me off about stuff like 6 Feet Under. Besides his vocals, which I cannot stand, but yeah.
And what I wanted to find out from you is this: let's say if you were to take a global snapshot of the heavy metal community, how
Mm.
do you think the Asian region compares? Let's say when it comes to black metal to the Scandinavian region, when it comes to death metal, let's say to Florida or the Western countries or different genre or different regions rather.
So, in terms of the Asian scene, one thing I've noticed is that, like, for example, now that we're talking, I might as well bring this up. So, you and I have delved into something called K pop. Yes?
Oh yeah, I absolutely love K-pop. That's
Yes.
in,
Now,
in K-pop, just Blackpink. I mean,
no, 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 I know. But, one of the fathers of K pop actually started in nu metal.
oh yeah. And
So
was he a fan of Nirvana as well, if I'm not
the
mistaken?
man had his own nu metal band for a long time,
Okay.
a long time. And he ended up producing BTS records and
Oh,
creating that scene. And, it's very interesting to see different countries and what their scene is, and see that scene come out of the closet, so to speak. But One thing I realized is that in Asia, especially, it's very closeted. It's very closeted. Like, for example, one of the things that I've noticed ever since COVID happened was that there has been a rise in what I like to call the reaction channels.
True. Yeah.
You know, everybody from their grandmother to their grandfather has a reaction channel where it's like elders react to Slipknot, or my granddad reacts to Slaughter to Prevail, or
Yeah.
something like that. And in a way, I actually am for these channels because it opens people's ears. Plus, it also brings metal to the forefront, which is something that I personally regard because it's a genre that I love. It's something that I feel doesn't get appreciated as much as it should.
Mhm.
And for me, one of the things I specifically go for when I see all these reaction channels is watching vocal coaches,
Yeah.
you
I've
know,
noticed that too. Yeah.
because you'll see a lot of vocal coaches, opera singers, blah, 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 blah. They'll start reacting to metal and then uh, they'll be like, oh my God, how can you do that? And I'm like, and then, watching them dissect that and understand that and, see growth
Yeah.
for fan bases of said band makes me happy.
Absolutely. I've noticed even, some of the jazz elite drummers, they
Yeah,
tend to give their reaction videos on, death metal drumming as well.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Now, what I want to find out next is, Sid, you
yeah.
particularly, when there is a new album or record coming up, what
Mhm.
are the things that you personally are looking at?
When an album or a new record comes out, I don't really look at anything, to be fair. I
Just
just listen to what
experience.
I listen to the material,
Mm,
okay? Like for me, one of the things I do, like for example, you and I know Inquisition, right?
yep.
No Inquisition, the black metal band.
Yep.
So one of the things I specifically do is I always tend to separate art from the artist,
That is a brilliant point here.
you know? Because say said artist is involved in some scandal, like he's a pedophile or whatever, that is the artist. What art he creates, I
That
will
is.
not let his personality cloud my judgment. I will judge the art based on what it is. If it's
Now,
good,
see, yeah, that is a
well and good.
very, very beautiful point because right now, with the political chaos that is going on right now, people are actually judging the music based on the artist rather than the actual artwork. So, what you're saying is absolutely a brilliant point.
No, because at the end of the day, you have to understand yes, it is an extension of the artist's personality, but at the same time, there are many factors that you have to take into account besides just the message that is being said. Okay. You have to take into account the technicality, the production, how memorable it is, whether it keeps you invested for the runtime of whatever it is. You have to think about all that while you're listening to the record. You cannot just keep your narrow opinions based on what said personality has done or what news has come out because the art doesn't reflect that. Understand?
Yeah,
The art communicates a specific opinion about a specific topic. You cannot use the issues clouding said artist to then form your opinion on the art that is being produced.
that is such a brilliant point because, if there is any controversy, people try to associate that with the actual song as well, which does not make any sense.
Exactly, exactly. Like I, for me personally, I'm a cinephile as well. I watch a ton of movies. I make it a point to at least watch a movie a day.
Yep,
And for me, say an actor or an actress faces backlash, I don't go around saying I'm going to do cancel culture because
exactly.
at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I will judge the art based on what it is. If it's a well made film, I will applaud it for what it is. I'm not going to say that the performance stood out because this person is a pedophile. No,
Yeah,
you know. That's why for me, when people bring up that Ronnie Radke from Falling in Reverse is a douchebag, I don't care about what he does in his personal life or how he projects himself to society. Because at the end of the day, I know he has a very vibrant persona. But what he produces as his art is on a very good and high standard. And
yeah.
that's what matters to me.
I think it's a brilliant, brilliant takeaway to separate art from the artist. Because
100%. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you have to at least appreciate the fact that the artist has spent time to create it. If you give them that time to take in their effort, that means more than canceling them completely because of some statement that they made or some shit like that.
very true. I do feel that, cancel culture needs to be cancelled. That is eventually, hopefully, someday we'll be able to
Yes.
achieve that.
Hopefully it does happen, but given the way society is now, it's not going to happen anytime soon because everybody's volatile and, you know, quick to pull the triggers.
Yeah, wokeism is definitely growing right now. Now, the next question which I wanted to ask is something which you already answered earlier on. That is regarding your favorite genre of music. Now, you mentioned about black metal. Now, what is it that is unique and what is it that means special to you regarding black metal?
So, I mean, I can always broaden the answer. It doesn't have to be just black metal. I mean, for me, now, if you've noticed in the group, I don't share any heavy metal or thrash.
Yeah,
Because for me, I can't stand those two anymore. And sadly, one of the genres that I absolutely started to despise now is power metal.
okay.
I don't like dragons and shit anymore. I'm way past that. But like for me, I like my progressive stuff. You know, like progressive metal, progressive death metal, progressive black metal, blah 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 blah, or how many ever subgenres are in there and subgenres because you always have subgenres of
Mhm.
subgenres and that umbrella just keeps getting bigger. The same thing with black metal because I mean for me I enjoy my black metal. I enjoy the shitty nature of black metal. You know, I enjoy my atmospheric black metal because at the end of the day when you're listening to music like that, even though it's abrasive, to me what matters is the emotion that it gets, you
Yeah,
know, because when you're listening to black metal it's not so much the message that is being given but more the emotion that is felt when you're listening to that because I mean at the end of the day in all of the metal subgenres that is the most raw, you know, because it started out as being something that had started with really shitty production quality that nobody really cared about, that
yeah.
people used to make in their own shed or in their own lodge or something like that.
The old speaker.
Yeah, people didn't care about that, but it still made its name because at the end of the day, it made people feel something. It resonated with them. And for me, music that resonates with me will always be higher than any message because at the end of the day it managed to incite a reaction, you know. I do the but one thing is that the reaction has to be positive.
True.
If it's negative reaction that can go the other way. That's why for me uh, a lot of black metal hits, especially atmospheric black metal, like I showed you Ringair last night, right?
Yeah.
Did that make your head explode?
Kind of. I mean, I was listening to it at 4 a.m. in the morning while I was recording my regular podcast.
Yeah, it's
Something unique, yeah.
yeah.
And what I wanted to find out is, say, the new extensive exploration of music. Have you come across any hidden gems? Something that you just mentioned a few minutes ago. Are there any hidden gems that you'd like listeners to know more about?
There's plenty. There's so many. Like for me, one of the albums that I've kept coming back to this year is actually an album by Majesties
Okay,
called Vast Reaches Unclaimed. It's a melodic death metal album by members of a band called Obsequies.
I see.
Okay, they're a Canadian band, and one of the those guys actually play electronic harp in a lot of their music, and it's
Interesting.
very very interesting. Majesties though sounds very Swedish, so if you like your Swedish melodic death metal, it tickles that itch,
Hmm.
you know. But I'll tell you one thing: of all the death metal records that were commercial, I think for me, Dying Fetus was above all of them.
Oh, definitely love that.
I I enjoyed my Death Cloak record. I enjoyed my Cannibal Corpse, all of that. I enjoyed all of that. But the Dying Fetus record and John Gallagher just, mm, you know,
Absolutely. I mean, I can listen to Dying Fetus non-stop, 24/7, no problem whatsoever. Along with
yeah,
that,
and it's just that they keep putting out quality. They haven't had any lows yet,
yeah.
right?
In 2000, and I'm trying to recollect, was it 2011 or 12? They wanted to play in a download festival where they don't necessarily play extreme genre music. And the hashtag that they had was, "Why not Dying Fetus?" They tried to trend quite a lot in UK, and finally they did play in download festival as well, and it was an absolutely massive event for them as well.
You know, I'll tell you something. For me, actually, my first encounter with Dying Fetus was a song that not many people actually go back to,
Which,
because a lot of people, when you mention Dying Fetus, they'll be like, "Oh, your treachery will die with you," etc., etc. But for me, my first introduction to Dying Fetus was a song called "Homicidal Retribution."
oh yeah,
Okay, that song and that interval, okay, where all three of them play at the same speed
yeah.
was just ah
One of my favorite song is, "Tearing the Womb." I think
yes.
Streaks of Blood. I think they have quite a lot of covers as well. Now, Sid, one trend, which I particularly have observed, that when I was growing up, band members used to focus on, let's say, the entire album. But
Yes.
now, and this is not necessarily, let's say, with heavy metal genre as such, bands in general are focusing on just one single song. If you know K-pop or Blackpink, they're just
Yeah,
releasing one song.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what
yeah.
all the career is made. What are your thoughts about, just one song, and that is driving the entire success for it? Well, this might be how the industry is moving forward, isn't it?
It is moving forward, but at the same time, it's kind of detrimental because the problem with becoming a singles band is that when you do release your full length or your EP, it doesn't hit as well.
Yeah,
Like for example, I'll give you a very good example. If you take something like Slaughter to Prevail, yes, the Russian deathcore band with Alex Terrible doing his extremely low lows that make you feel like Satan is in the room or whatever. Um, they are a singles band,
okay.
okay, because you have to understand their singles get big numbers, and I mean really big numbers, because once COVID happened and all the YouTube channels blew up, you have zero idea how many people started reacting to them because of Alex Terrible's lows. There were so many people, and I mean, a few metal critics brought this up that Slaughter to Prevail does really good singles, but their albums don't hold up as much.
That is one trend, isn't it?
They make really good singles, but when it comes to the full length, it crashes.
Yeah, and that is one of the drawbacks, focusing on singles. And you know what's it? One trend which I've been observing, and this may not necessarily be applicable, let's say, to heavy metal as such, because of Instagram. We have stories.
Oh,
A lot
Jesus.
of the hardcore musicians, they are focusing on not even a single song, but just creating music for 15 seconds. So a lot of them are making the livelihood.
Yes.
I'm not sure if jingles is the right word for them, but their whole earning is just making some form of music, which is, let's say, 15 seconds long, so that, Instagram influencers can tend to use that. So do you think that is, yeah,
Man, Napalm Death had done that in 1990. Okay, he made a fucking song for 20 seconds and that blew up.
100%, yeah, Napalm Death already did those things, yeah. But the problem is, you can't use Napalm Death, let's say, if you're sharing an Instagram story of, let's say, for beautiful scenery, that'd be absolutely wicked and wild.
Yeah, that's true. But I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed, especially on Instagram. It's very cringe.
Yeah,
There's so much cringe content. Like, for example, now with TikTok, there was this whole segment called Metal TikTok, which is terrible. It's terrible. Then YouTube jumped on that same bandwagon, making YouTube shorts.
yeah.
Instagram makes reels. Facebook makes stories. All these guys just. Mm.
And you never know with the invention of ChatGPT, artificial intelligence. Do you know of any bands that have created music purely based on artificial intelligence? Now, so far as heavy metal is concerned, I really am not sure, but
So there is a band. It's called Boy What. It's a it's a band essentially focused around a SpongeBob character.
okay,
You know Plankton, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So if Plankton could make metal using AI,
Ah,
that's what this band sounds like.
okay, okay, okay. Interesting, interesting.
Yes. You have to understand. I've been on the very weird side of metal many times. Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
one side, which is definitely picking up pace, particularly in the region that we are living in Dubai and UAE, is that the gaming industry. Do you know, are there any bands that are catered or could be catered only, let's say, to the gaming industry? Because one of the biggest visions of Sheikh Hamdan is, to invest heavily in the gaming industry, particularly in Dubai.
I mean, if you think about it, if you take games, one of them is Mick Gordon. You
Mhm.
know who Mick Gordon is, right? The guy
Not really.
he made the Doom soundtrack.
Okay.
So he's probably one of the last people keeping metal alive in the gaming scene.
Mhm.
Because I mean, back in the 2000s, when you had racing games or first-person shooters and stuff like that, metal used to be a part of those. Like, for
Yeah.
example, people used to listen to Disturbed or Slipknot or Mudvayne or uh, Godsmack or any of these big gateway bands now. And then slowly, games transitioned away from that and started going the more pop route, which is kind of sad. But
Yes, I'm just hoping that, there is some extreme death metal band that gets into gaming and does get a lot of recognition. Now, Sid, listen, I'm from the world of Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency, and metaverse. Now, just last week, I covered news about Megadeth, and they actually released an
the
NFT
NFTs, eh,
which goes live on the 22nd. So, what essentially happens is people who buy these NFTs will get exclusive access to their music. They can also get meet and greet. Now, from a technical point of view and from a band's point of view, it is absolutely great.
it's additional revenue.
Yeah. And the
It's,
biggest thing about NFTs is the middle person is kicked out.
it's,
So, well, let's say if you were to buy a record or a label, the band gets pretty much 100% of the earnings. So, what are your thoughts about NFTs in extreme genre?
Mhm. I do think it's a very positive prospect, actually, because at the end of the day, in every single genre, you're gonna have an issue where the record label decides to fuck you over,
Mhm.
you know? And that happens many times. That's why bands change record labels so often. You might see a band go from Napalm to Metal Blade to I Void Hanger or whatever the fuck that record is called. Um, so it it ge- it's good that bands are getting these additional sources of revenue, because you have to understand, if you see how bands start off, yeah, like let's take the case of a Toronto-based band like Arcspire.
Mhm.
Okay, so Arcspire is a band, technical death metal band, that has recently exploded because people have started to realize that bands can play fast, but at the same time they can retain melody. You know, then that's something Oxpire does very well, because even though they play at like 320 to 340 beats per minute, they still manage to retain melody. They took that and they went neoclassical,
Mm.
something that is very refreshing given how big the neoclassical movement was in the 90s. You had shredders like Marty Friedman, you had Jason Becker before his ALS, you had Steve Vai, you had many others. You had even Yingwi Malmsteen when
Yeah.
he wasn't singing. Um, so it's very refreshing to see that. I enjoy the shit out of that because, like, shred is fun.
Yep, yep. Now we are almost towards the end of the episode, Sid. Now, one thing which we share in common is passion for K-pop. Now, I admit
Jesus
that I
Christ.
absolutely love Blackpink, not necessarily BTS. Now, what I want to do is, I want to get your take on it because look, when I look at the number of views that, let's say, BTS gets or Blackpink gets, so as a matter of fact, I'm quite active on Twitter. A normal tweet stating that one of the K-pop idols is not keeping well does actually
Oh
surpass the
my
number of views.
God.
Let's say the whole political chaos situation going on. So, what
And
are your thoughts about K-pop and its impact in the music industry?
K-pop exploded like nobody's business.
Mhm.
Okay? But at the end of the day, essentially, K-pop artists are, they are promoted by their production companies. You know, it's like a proper factory assembly line. They segregate the talent based on how well they can do, and then push forward.
And one thing which I found out is the team does the songwriting, everything, and then they decide which artist gets
Yeah,
credit
yeah,
for
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Which
Yeah.
strange or not, but
I mean,
looks like it is working.
I
Maybe
mean,
that's the
it
industry.
works using the same essential components like pop or
Yeah,
R&B, because at the end of the day, all of these genres have multiple songwriters. Like for example, we take Taylor Swift.
yeah,
She doesn't write her own shit anymore.
correct. Yeah,
She's got like 11 people writing it.
yeah. I think Ed Sheeran used to write for her at one point of time, if I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
mistaken.
yeah. And I have a friend now who has become a big K-pop head, and he loves Twice.
Oh yeah,
And if you say any shit about Twice, he goes batshit on my ass if I say I don't like him or whatever. I never did that, but yeah, I mean, with all these fandoms, there comes a certain level of toxicity. And I'm not saying that just in the K-pop space. I'm saying that in the metal space as well. That brings me back to my whole metal elitist point,
yep,
where especially in a genre like black metal or like metalcore or even death metal, where certain bands are held in such high regard that the OG fans start feeling singled out when the band decides to do a progressive sound or to do even simple things like add clean vocals. Have you ever seen a band receive backlash because they decided to add clean vocals? You won't believe, but I remember when Cavalera left Sepultura,
Hmm.
and Eric Green joined, and
Hmm.
he decided he wanted to do clean vocals.
Okay.
The sheer amount of backlash he got for
You
that.
can't do that to Sepultura, though, isn't it? Because
No, some of the best songs Sepultura makes is with that man's clean vocals. Okay, he's great with his growls and shit, but his clean vocals are good.
hmm.
You know, I mean, Seven Dust made an entire career out of Witherspoon's clean vocals. You know, and he came from a gospel singing background. His mom used to sing gospel. No wonder he can belt out that shit. You know, and that brings me on to a point that I would like to discuss. It'll probably be one of my final 2 points, and that is inclusivity in the metal scene. Because until I started getting into metal, I used to think, how many women are in there? Are there people of varying backgrounds, blacks, whites, Asians, blah blah blah. And watching bands like Seven Dust, Jesus Peace, all of these bands that have musicians of color really shows that there is a certain degree of inclusivity in metal. Watching bands explode like Arch Enemy, Spirit Box, Ginger also shows that women are not afraid to growl, which is so refreshing because if you see, there's very few women who actually growl.
And now there are a couple of female-fronted bands and just female
I mean, female fronted bands
voice.
usually, if you think about it, used to be segregated into two genres: power metal, symphonic metal. You never had a melodic death metal band with a female voice. You never had a black metal band with a female voice. I mean, a couple of years ago, Holder, Holder?
Not really. Yeah.
So Holder is a one woman black metal band.
Oh, okay.
And it's very good.
Is
Very,
that from
very.
the Scandinavian region or?
Yes, yes.
Oh, I see. Okay, okay.
Then, for example, there is shit. There is also Arcona. I
Mm,
think they're Ukrainian. They're also a female-fronted black metal band,
interesting.
and it's so nice to see that people are starting to give women a chance to actually go full primal and not just be la 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 la.
And now we have Nervosa, you have Crypta, you have Sisters of Suffocation. We all of them are
Yes,
females in the band, and I
yes,
think Nervosa's drummer, she's absolutely wicked in Baal as well.
yes, yes.
Classically.
I mean, like, it's so. I mean, there used to be a band. There was a Scottish band, if I'm not wrong, called Cerebral Bore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen them quite a number of times. Yeah,
Yeah.
he used to have a female-fronted vocalist, and there was some
Yes.
issues with that. Yeah.
Yes. And she was very heavy.
She
So
was off from Facebook for quite some time, but recently she's back on.
I know. I mean, one of my favorite female vocalists is actually Malika Sundaramurthy from
Yeah,
Formality, and I
she's an
forgot.
absolute beast as well, right?
She's like fucking female corpse grinder, man.
Yeah, she's an absolute beast, and she's a vegan as well.
And she's a Tamilian half.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Now, Sid, we're almost done with our session. I want to ask two fun questions, and you can be as honest as much as possible with that. Aliens, do
What
they
the
exist?
fuck?
What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, okay. Do they exist? I can't say for sure, actually,
Mhm.
because I mean, at the end of the day, the universe is vast. Okay, we can't say what's going on in another galaxy compared to us because we don't have the means to get there. But I mean, I wouldn't completely rule out their existence because at the end of the day, we are in one galaxy. There
Yep.
could be life in other galaxies. They might be primitive, they might be superlative.
Yeah.
But we can't say that we're just the only life form because
Well,
I
one
think,
of the reasons why I wanted to ask you that's it. I'm not sure if you know of Alex Jones.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, I
there is
think
a band dedicated to Alex Jones as well. Anyways, he's back on Twitter just a few days ago.
holy
And he
cow.
has posted something really stark, really critical information regarding aliens. And he's saying that aliens are already among us. So, I'll send you the link about that later on. And the next question, what I wanted to ask is if you were to get a tattoo of your band, what would that be? Well, which band would that be?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if I had to get a tattoo of a band, number one, that would hurt too much. Number two, I would rather do an album cover. I'm not putting
Oh,
Shaggy's face on my body.
yeah.
Uh, uh,
Yeah, an album cover would be absolutely wicked, isn't it? That does actually
yeah,
make
yeah. I actually, one of the album covers that continually fascinates me is Cannibal Corpse's The Wretched Spawn.
Oh, yeah, that's absolutely wicked and wild, right?
Yeah, it's fucked up. I enjoy the shit out of it,
Yeah,
but
yeah. I mean, with reference to Cannibal Corpse, it is one of those bands, Me personally, I absolutely love the band because the second song I ever learned to play drums was Skull Full of Maggots. So I absolutely love that band, despite what people say.
I mean, for me, the one thing I respect about them is that even though they've kept the same sound,
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, the sound is virtually unchanged, but that if your ears are good enough, you would understand the little tiny tweaks, yeah, and those make all the difference.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
And the fact that they now have the main guy from Hate Eternal.
Oh, Eric Rutan, he's an absolute legend and a
Oh,
beast.
yeah, they
He's a,
made a good decision with him.
and I think Hate Eternal did play in Dubai as well, right? A few years ago. I missed that gig.
I don't remember. Did they?
Yeah, they definitely played in Dubai. So, definitely, definitely missed. So anyways, Sid, thank you so much for doing this, man. Really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Finally, is there any word you'd like to share to our audience or listeners, or any advice or how to keep track on the upcoming latest records or albums?
I mean, for me, it's just that even if you're a casual listener of metal, just try and broaden your horizons a little bit.
Yep,
Because, rather than just staying with the mainstream, it's good to investigate what's happening in the underground because the actual gold standard of metal is still in the underground. It's not in the mainstream.
that's absolutely sound advice. Another thing which I liked what you said is, try to separate the artist from
Yes.
the art. That is absolutely critical, especially in the woke culture that we are in. So, thank you so very much for doing this, Sid.
Oh, my pleasure.
Have a nice one day. Thank you.
We'll catch up again. Don't worry.